All right, I would like to call to order the Monday, January 6th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Alder Moore is excused. Alder Wood.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have no minutes this evening. Under appearances, I don't think we have any other appearances other than the proclamation, right?
of the mayor, yep.
I have a proclamation recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 20th, 2025, which I'm going to read up here. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, and became the chief organizer of the Civil Rights Movement by leading peaceful, nonviolent protests throughout the American South. And whereas in 1963, during the March on Washington, 250,000 people gathered outside the Lincoln Memorial to hear Dr. King's I Have a Dream address. And whereas, due in large part to Dr. King's efforts, the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits racial discrimination and segregation in employment, education, and public facilities, was adopted in 1964. Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize later that year. And whereas Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968, and whereas on November 2nd, 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed legislation making the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. a legal public holiday to be observed on the third Monday of every January, and whereas President Bill Clinton signed the King Holiday and Service Act on August 23, 1994, which designated the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday as a day of community service, interracial cooperation, and youth anti-violence initiatives. And whereas in 2020, the Monona City Council, recognizing that Dr. King's efforts reflect the values and spirit of the Monona community as a whole, adopted Martin Luther King Jr. Day as an official city holiday. Now therefore I, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor of Monona, Wisconsin, in collaboration with the Monona City Council, do hereby acknowledge Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 20th, 2025, and encourage the residents of the city of Monona to continue to honor Dr. King's service and legacy throughout the year. Signed in the city of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this 6th day of January 2025, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. Thank you. Moving on, we have no public hearing, we have no consent agenda, we have two items under unfinished business, council action items. First, item 1A, convene in closed session under Wisconsin statute section 19.85, paren 1, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This involves two items, the Broadway TIF Entity LLC development agreement and the lease agreement with Adams Outdoor Advertising. So would the clerk please call the roll? Or is there, first of all, is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist. Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
We are in closed session and will adjourn to the
Yep.
suppose you could, is Mr. Picky the one from?
Yes. Yeah, and I texted him.
Oh, no.
Are we good?
Tell me more about the project.
I'm sure.
All right. Moving on to the next item, consideration of Resolution 24-12-2764, approving a development agreement between the City of Monona, Monona Community Development Authority, and Broadway TIF Entity LLC, put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mr. Dorn is here, if we have any questions from him. Doug, did you have anything to add?
Nothing else to add.
Anybody have any further questions about this? Okay, hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks.
Next item, consideration of Resolution 24-12-2752, award of contract for 2025 Community Center remodel project, put forth by the Parks and Rec Board, and Jake is here tonight to talk about this a little bit and answer any questions if anyone has. Is there a motion to approve it?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Jake?
Good evening. This project has been several years in the making, kind of addressing some priority safety issues in the community center with the stairwell, some office reconfiguration for the senior center, and changing over of some of the lower level rooms, and then in the upper level, we'll be doing an office reconfiguration for Parks and Rec staff, and I know Diane was here last meeting, and it's our intent that we would still have multiple members of the Park and Rec team at the community center to handle in-house public transactions, while we still have half of our team over at Maywood School for the rec. We still have walk-in programs that we're doing at the community center. So not all of our rec programs have moved over. So it'd be myself as the director, the assistant director, and one of our rec supervisors would be in the community center. And so that has an office reconfiguration. There's also some updates to the main hall, which would be the main community gathering space, lighting, painting. You know, it's the intent that we continue to have public events in the building, so like Little Badger Consignment Sale. We're going to be doing a sports swap, equipment swap this spring. And then as we work through Park and Rec Board and this board about what direction we should have as far as community use. But ideally, I'd like to see more nonprofit, Monona-based organizations have use to that building and the room. So that's what this bid is. We did have a competitive bid process, and KSW was the low bid, and who did work on both the fire department bathroom remodel and the senior center bathroom remodel, and we're very pleased with it. So I'm comfortable in recommending award bid.
Does this do something about Diane's office? I didn't see a mention of it here, but are we going to expand her office?
I think
or
that got,
something?
I think her office, I don't know, Rick,
Diane's on the call.
oh, Diane's here, yeah.
There she is.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that expansion is part of the plan.
okay. I just want to make sure that you're not in a tiny little closet. You're in a bigger closet, right?
Bigger
So-
closet,
Any other questions about this?
I have one.
Rick?
I asked last time, I'm not sure if you know, but there were some electrical issues that Brad had spotted, and there was a memo from 2022. Does this address any of that? There were some things that didn't quite meet code.
If there's anything that's not meeting code, it will get addressed during the project, because we'll
Okay.
have to have a building permit that will get issued, and so
Okay.
that will identify that.
Okay,
and
so
get
it
taken
might
care of.
take some of that reserve to do it.
That is, yeah, that is correct. There's, you know, with an older building, there's always that chance that during construction we'll run into that. And we have some reserve funding in the project, and then we would also, I have a project in the capital that is available for contingency funding that would come
Mhm.
back to this board for a capital budget amendment if needed.
And there was an issue, I think, in the upper room towards the peak of the roof where bees were coming in.
Yeah, we did get that taken care of. It
Okay,
was a
but there's
multi-
still some repair that needs to be done?
I think that was, I know we got the bees out of there with our contracted service, and I think that did get buttoned up to prevent future
Okay,
attack of the.
because when I
wasps.
saw it a couple months ago, it was still, you could see inside
To
the
see
wall.
it in there, yeah. And maybe it would have to get done with that, yeah, that was a lot of bees.
Not where you want bees.
There's a lot of bees, yeah.
And one more question. I know there's some issues with the balcony that's not going to be addressed with this, but
Not on this project, no.
But
That would
does it-
be,
is it something that needs to be repaired, or is it fine the way it is as long
Uh,
as you don't use it?
I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not usable by code based on the fence on it. We've had some issues with underneath soffit. It would probably be a separate project to have it completely removed. As far as now, it's not structurally, affecting the building. There's some of the underneath soffit stuff is where we've had some of the issues that can be repaired, but at some point, yeah.
The birds are building nests inside of there?
There is a section of soffit that did getting repaired at the end of last summer, but yeah, there will be more repair work that needs to be done on the soffit part of that.
Anyone else? Teresa?
I'm really happy to see this happening. Can you remind everyone what the time frame is?
It's gonna be a 6 to 8 week remodel. It's gonna be happening hopefully this month, to start on it and get done before, the spring season. So we'll have some disruption to, programs, although it does call for working around it. So we're gonna try to balance the programming of the senior center and the parks department, around where we can,
Yeah.
shift some things up. And if we have
Yeah.
to, potentially shift some programs over to Maywood, we'll be able to do that as well.
And is the community center currently, are people currently able to rent the community center for like a party, a wedding reception?
No,
And after this remodel, they would be able to?
we'll need some direction
Okay.
from council and
Okay.
funding for staffing if that
Oh,
was
okay.
the will of this body.
Yeah, when we stopped that, a big part of the reason was we couldn't get staffing for it on weekend evenings.
Yeah.
So the reason behind stopping it wasn't because of structural safety, it was
No.
because of staffing? Okay.
Staffing, and we had brought the after-school program into the building.
Got
and so
it.
it was kind of full-time program building.
Got it.
And so now that they're not there, it brings the possibility, I wouldn't recommend having private events, given the cost and the money involved with it really isn't a net revenue generator for the city based on all the activities that we have, but things like, potentially bringing back a trivia event.
Sure.
As a fundraiser type event for
Yeah.
Manila-based organizations. I could certainly throw support behind if we can do it in a way that isn't impacting senior programs or potential damage to the facility or additional cleaning, so.
Seem to remember the mayor had a pretty good trivia team.
That's what I heard.
While it lasted, they had a good run, but then another team came.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tell us more, Alder
Yeah,
Rocker.
yeah.
Rub it in a little.
I guess I'm just asking because I actually recently did have someone approach me, told me how happy they were. She and her husband were married, and years ago they were coming up on their 25th. Their wedding reception was at the community center, and she wondered if there was any chance of having, a party at the community center. And I just wasn't sure. So, yeah. All right.
Anyone else? Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, and was Diane left, I think?
Looks like she
I don't know
did.
if she had anything.
Oh,
Diane,
she's
did you
there.
have anything else to add?
Not on my end. We're just anxious to get the project started, and I think KSW is also anxiously waiting for us to say this is approved so that they can get it going.
Okay, great. Well, if there isn't anything else, then would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Holmquist,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Rademacher,
Aye.
Alder Bernstein,
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
And just a side note, Mayor, I think we'd like to do a ribbon cutting on those stairs when we actually get
I
those
think
steps.
that's an awesome.
On
That'd
each
be
and every,
great.
do a ribbon cutting on each and
And
every
each
one.
Right. Motion passes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jake.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business. Item 2A, consideration of ordinance 1-25-784, amending the zoning code with respect to electronic smoking retailers put forth by the Plan Commission. And this is a first read on this one tonight. Doug?
Good evening, everybody. So, as mentioned, this is in response to the moratorium that was passed in May of last year, May of 2024, placing a temporary moratorium on electronic smoking retailers after finding that the availability and use of these devices may have harmful impacts on the welfare of Monona residents. The City Council found that an in-depth examination of regulations, establishments selling electronic smoking devices or electronic smoking device paraphernalia was timely and necessary. So that's really the focus of the memo. I'm going to run through it, but there's a lot more detail in there than I will go through, but happy to answer questions. I'll just try and keep it kind of high level as far as the findings and some of the steps that were taken. So first off, the CDC has deemed the consumption of tobacco through various methods, including e-cigarettes, also known as vape, as unsafe as it leads to addiction, disease, disability, and other lasting negative health outcomes. While e-cigarettes are recognized as generally beneficial by the FDA compared to traditional cigarettes for adult smokers, the youth popularity of these has definitely become a concern. And statistics show that a higher percentage of 18 to 24-year-olds use e-cigarettes than adults in other age groups. Additionally, when doing this research, the location and concentration of stores selling e-cigarettes and other alternative tobacco products near an adolescent's home neighborhood was associated with a greater likelihood of the youth using those products. Did go into a little bit of detail here in the memo about sort of the THC background, the DPCPs, and the impact on youth, and how they're targeting them. And there's some additional materials also included in the memo as well. So as far as local data, this is sort of combined with the work that was completed by the city clerk, following on from Wisconsin Act 73 with regards to the licensing of these stores. So this gives us a little bit of a better idea generally of tobacco stores, those selling cigarettes, e-vaping devices, and tobacco products. As of early November of last year, there are 13 of those retailers licensed within the city, and I think a couple others are still underway and sort of in the licensing process. So as part of the moratorium, there was a sort of definition that was used there by which the restriction was put in place. So temporary moratorium was placed on new electronic smoking retailers that were defined as an establishment that had 10% or more of its floor space dedicated to, or more than 10% of its stock in trade consisting of electronic smoking devices or electronic smoking device paraphernalia. Based on staff sort of review, mapping, and sort of looking at some of the data here, based on that definition, the expectation is that there are 4 of these stores within the city. A couple of those on Monona Drive, one of those on East Broadway, as well as one on West Broadway. So as far as the zoning precedents, the municipalities can address these concerns and regulate the location of stores through zoning. The best practice has generally been to limit the uses, specifically tobacco retail uses near gathering spaces for youth, and to limit the proximity of the stores to one another. There are plenty of examples of this taking place in Wisconsin, other municipalities, including the cities of Madison, Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, and West Allis. A couple examples that I really looked at for guidance on this were both City of Madison as well as City of Milwaukee. So Madison, they created a land use definition for tobacco retailer. This did include e-cigarettes based sort of on the subcategory of tobacco paraphernalia. The standard to be a retailer is based on the percentage of floor area or display area for sale, very similar to the moratorium we had. And again, they include the option for supplemental regulations. So as part of that, it allows for geographical restrictions from youth-oriented uses, which I can get into a definition of a little bit more. For them, it's a 1,000-foot buffer, as well as a proximity to the same type of retailer, which is a 500-foot buffer. If it meets those standards within certain zoning districts, these are allowed. They do also prohibit these stores in certain districts, such as single-family and things like that as well. Again, City of Milwaukee did this most recently. They revised their ordinance in 2023. It was 500-foot buffer of existing, similarly class retailers, as well as 1,000 feet from an elementary or secondary school, library, daycare center, park, or playground. Again, these were sort of combined with the 10% restrictions that we used, the language that was used in our moratorium. And again, these are prohibited in residential, parks, institutional districts, and allowed as a limited use if it meets the standards in all commercial, downtown, and industrial districts. So the Plan Commission did hear this. They held a public hearing on November 11th of last year of 2024, and that was also preceded by a Class 2 notice posted in the Herald Independent. Gave the opportunity for the public to provide testimony on this, but also for the Commission to review the same memo that you have in your meeting packet, but also to provide feedback and discussion with city staff. The recommendation from city staff, after considering the research findings, specifically the impact to the younger population, was to limit new electronic smoking retailers. Existing stores would be grandfathered with this proposed ordinance within certain zoning districts, as well as imposing buffers for those areas that they are allowed as a limited use. The reason for the buffers, certainly the precedent that has been elsewhere, but the definition of the buffers was really what would be an easy walk between these locations. Again, thinking of the sort of the targeted demographic here, what would be accessible, what would be easy, and sort of limiting the proliferation of those in some way. So a couple different maps were prepared, both 500 as well as 1,000 feet were prepared for this meeting. And the recommendation that came out of the Plan Commission was actually for 750 foot buffer for both. So it would be the same buffer for both uses, both for the existing stores as well as for sort of youth-oriented uses and sort of that expanded definition as used in the city of Milwaukee. This part of the moratorium was that this should also go to the Public Safety Committee. Materials are included in the meeting packet about the reason it did not go to that. We do have department head support for this ordinance as written. I know the police chief is here this evening as well. That's all included in here for information. And City Attorney Cole had drafted the draft ordinance put forward as proposed, so it would be prohibited within many of the zoning districts and available as a limited use within retail business, commercial, industrial, and community design district. Of course, meeting the maps, depending on the buffer, would be the recommendation. So Plan Commission were comfortable with the districts, and their recommendation was that 750-foot buffer. So a lot of information. I tried to kind of run through it a little quickly there for you, but first read this evening, happy to answer any questions certainly that the council may have.
Does anyone, Rick, and then Doug?
When you say it's grandfathered in, if there's an existing location but they don't sell these products yet, can they still add that once, if such an ordinance was passed?
I would say the expansion of this would most likely mean that they need to adhere to the ordinance, would be my understanding.
Correct. They would not be grandfathered if they don't currently sell
Okay,
the product at the time you pass the ordinance, assuming you
Okay.
pass it.
that's good, thank you.
Doug, did you have?
Yeah, on the map, on it's page 78 of our packet, the one that shows the buffer zones, I notice there's the sort of dark red on Monona Drive, south of Dean, and north of Monona Drive. There's a stretch that's not within a buffer zone. I was wondering if that were, assume it was done purposely, or why that stretch, that would seem, well, why that stretch was left out.
And I'm sorry, I don't have the page numbers. Which buffer specifically is that? Do you have the dimensions on that one?
Want me to put
It's
it up on the screen
750.
here?
It's
750,
the-
okay. There were no specific, this was all done geographically, so this
Okay.
was not, the inputs were given. Brad Barun helped me making these maps. Everything green with sort of a parcel address that you'll see was identified as that youth focused establishment, use. So that could be a school, a playground, a park, something like that. So there was nothing, the boundaries were not drawn arbitrarily.
Mhm.
They were all based on sort of geographic measures instead.
Is this the area you're referring to, Alder?
Yes, right across from the Monona Golf Course.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, if we increase the buffer to 800 feet, that would take care of those as well.
I think it is probably important to point out that you would be doing this under your zoning authority, right? You're not doing it under your public health and safety authority. So it is, the distances are done to deal with impacts that the empirical data shows. You know, in your packet, that we've got the chief's memo and the report from the planner. So it was not an exercise of adjusting the distance to cover certain areas. It was more determining what distance is appropriate based on the empirical data, and then that distance was plugged in, and that's, the lines fall where they do then.
Right. Was the empirical data so clear that you couldn't say it's 800 versus 750 or 700 versus 750?
Yeah, I mean, I not to speak for Doug, I think the 750 was determined based on the average walking time, you know, it's with the idea being if children were at a park or something, how far would they be likely to walk to a certain issue? So whether it's 750 or 800, I doubt it was done with that much authority.
Yeah, I would say from my desk, it was really sort of the other examples in the state. I certainly recognize larger municipalities, both Milwaukee and Madison, larger than us, of course. But the thinking here was sort of the distance maybe on a lunch break or something like that from school or something like that. So definitely as the Plan Commission were considering this, there was consideration of what is a city block, what is the time of that and things like that. So and I think one of the things that may not have been captured in the meeting minutes, but that I recall from the meeting itself, was that they were focused on it should probably be uniform for both. You know, if the intent is the spacing of these, if the intent is the buffer, I think that was sort of the reason for making it uniform across. To the distance itself, I think that they saw that as kind of a good balance between the two, that it was still a reasonable walk, but that it, they were comfortable with where it was.
Neil, did you want to add something?
Just a quick question, I guess, for either Doug or Bill. If the buffer line actually kind of goes halfway through a property, 750 feet, so it actually cuts through the middle of a parcel, not on a parcel line, does that prohibit that parcel from having that use as a whole parcel, or do they have to locate it on that parcel but outside of the buffer? Well, I mean, how does that?
Yeah, the retail operations would have to be outside of the buffer. So if the attributes of where the building sits on the lot would allow that, it could happen. But if the boundary goes through the building, no part of that building could be used for
Okay.
vape operation.
No part of that.
No part, correct.
Brian?
To the point regarding distance and walking, and you mentioned lunch. When I look at this map, I notice there's a major fast food restaurant that people travel to for lunch from both our high school as well as La Follette, which is clearly more than the 750 feet. And they are going there for lunch. And so, I mean, I think I would argue that 750 feet is not the appropriate distance. And we have hundreds of students coming from 2 different high schools routinely, day in, day out, to this location, and I would advocate for 1,000 feet for both.
Rick?
I'm wondering, when you draw these bubbles, can they be for schools that are outside of Monona? That the bubble would go into Monona? because you have like La Follette High School and other schools that are not included as part of this map.
At this time, it was only focused on Monona. And really, again, I should say that, you know, this, I think the intention, and I would say as the ordinance is written, is kind of would be how this would play out. Certainly, these maps would evolve over time as a new park comes, or a store changes or closes, or something like that. But I don't see a reason why the buffer could not be drawn, as Alder Holmquist suggested. You know, it is a consideration that we do still have students, you know, coming from outside of the municipality into it. So I think there'd certainly be overlap, but I think there's opportunity, absolutely, will follow us stands out as an option as well.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess the one thing, I know this is not what's in front of us right now, but when I read through the health survey that was done, which I thought was an amazing document, there seemed to be lots of considerations other than zoning in terms of how these are regulated by health agencies or by the police, I'm not sure. But just going in and questioning the owner into placement of signs and products and how they're managed within the store can have a lot of impact. And so I think this is just part of a larger program that probably should be developed.
Anyone else? I guess this will come back. I'm not sure if people want to talk about a bigger buffer, how that's handled.
We can certainly do that. I guess I would just caution the council that whatever number we do should have some empirical basis behind it, not just be sort of an ad hoc decision of a political body, contrary to what the data may suggest.
Makes sense. Anybody else?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, how would I go about satisfying that? How would I go about making sure that the number in my head meets the empirical data?
Yeah, I think the best way to do that would be to consult with Doug about the distance that you believe is appropriate. Doug can review the data available to him and advise you as to whether or not there is support for that distance or not. If there is, we can certainly put forth a alternate ordinance with that distance that you could propose at the next meeting.
Anyone else? Doug?
I mean, I would assume part of that could be factual observation in the field of what, you know, high school kids' behavior is. If they're walking down to McDonald's for lunch, then that, to me, would be a data point arguing in favor of extending the boundaries to include that.
I would agree. We would just want those observations then entered into the record, either through the clerk entering the minutes or something else, so there is documentation of that. The person willing to make those observations would also be obviously subject to subpoena, so this ordinance be challenged.
Brian said it first.
I'd be happy to sit there with a clicker.
That's how we get paid to do it.
Do we need more than one?
Clicker taker?
Yeah, I mean, how do we make this as, it just seems kind of very anecdotal until there need to be like 3 or 4 people observing this behavior. How does that?
No. I mean, this isn't a court of law at all.
Right.
I think in my way of thinking, you know, whenever we look at an ordinance like this or the council considers it, I have to look at, you know, is it subject to challenge? Is it likely to be challenged? And if so, how can I draft it to ensure the ordinance that the council passes is eventually upheld? So obviously, the more empirical data points, the better. There's no specific amount you have to say. I would just say with zoning, the council has broad discretion. It just cannot act in an arbitrary and capricious way. So as long as at the end of the day, if we are challenged in court, we can point to some factual basis that you based your decision on, that would be sufficient.
So if I were to ask 10 high school kids, do you walk to McDonald's for lunch? And they all say, yeah, we do it all the time. That would be enough?
Well, I certainly can't offer any guarantees as to what would be enough to win a lawsuit. I would be concerned about the verbal, just sort of hearsay basis of it.
That's kind of where I'm wondering too.
Yeah, I mean,
It seems kind of weak.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Chief, did you have a?
Yeah, just offer a recommendation that I'll obviously work with Director Plowman and the city administrator, but we do have somebody who's an expert at looking for children and watching for children, our crossing guard, and that position is going to go before you at some point in the near future to converting that title position to a community service officer. But we have somebody trained in acknowledging when children are present, and so we can task that individual, again, working with the director and Neil to do that count in a way that supports what I think the goal is here, is to base things on data. So you don't have to stand there.
Yeah.
Might have been fun.
Yeah.
So,
I was just say, there are certainly standard ways of tracking and monitoring pedestrian activity that are proven. So, and with the combination with what the chief has in mind, I think that would be pretty easy to put forward, so.
And I have a clicker he can borrow.
There we go.
is there do we need a formal request of staff to do that?
No, I think we've got, certainly at this first reading, issues have been raised, and I think at staff, we can
Okay.
look to those issues and address them. I would just encourage, to the extent any alder has a specific distance they have in mind, I think it would be good to discuss that with staff before the next meeting.
Anyone else? All right, we will move on to the next two items.
Thank you.
And I'm going to reverse the next two items, B and C. We didn't notice till the meeting started that we should have had these in a different order. They're both started for immediate approval, both related to the purchase of this fire truck for the chief. First one, item C, consideration of resolution 25-1-2771, amending the 2025 capital budget for the purchase of a 2023 Ford F-150XL for the fire department, put forth by the fire chief. Chief, would you like to come up here and you can, I think the council, before we vote on immediate action, if you could explain why this needs to be taken care of tonight?
Absolutely. Again, I apologize for my girls, it's cold weather messes with my knees. So, this came about rather suddenly. I'll give an abbreviated history of why we're here tonight. When I started, when I was hired by you wonderful folks, I needed an emergency response vehicle to drive home. We didn't have one currently. We have the command car, which was purchased in 2013. I, through my partner Brian back there, acquired a used police interceptor that they were going to surplus. We put some lights on it, it worked. And then rather than buying a new vehicle for myself, the following year we put forth to buy a vehicle to replace the brush truck. The brush truck that we had is the 09 Ford that we're discussing tonight. The intent was, once we put this new brush truck in service, I would drive that vehicle. The intent as well, to address Alderwood's earlier question, was not to have to replace it for 10 years, which is why it was not on the capital improvement plan. When the weather has gotten cold, it's being driven on a daily basis now. The previous 10 years, it was the brush truck that sat on the station most days. With the daily driving and the cold weather, started having some transmission issues. Had it examined by a mechanic at a local Ford dealership. I just won't name them because they did this off the books for me, and told me I'm having some significant transmission issues, which equates to several $1,000s. The other issue that has cropped up is the brush truck was never designed to be a first out vehicle. It was designed to go out after 3 or 4 more vehicles were already there, so the lighting to the rear of it is substandard is probably the best word that I can use for it. Very, very little lighting. And once we pulled that high pressure pump out of the back of it, with the extra springs in the back, it tips up and it negates the light bar that we have on top, so people can't see it. I had several near misses on the belt line, so I added some reflective striping to the back and to the front. I've had a few since then. So I've reached out to 3 companies to get quotes to update the lighting, to bring it up to standard lighting. Cheapest one was $8,500, up to about $12,900. There's also some exhaust issues with it. There's also an issue with the heating and AC. But while it still has value, the transmission is still working, knowing that it's going to fail and it's 15 years old. I personally was not interested in putting $20,000 into a 15-year-old vehicle. So I started doing research because the criteria that I had was something that had to be available now. Because if I order something off the state bid, it's 12 to 18 months to get the truck, another 6 months to get it upfit. And I wanted to be able to sell this vehicle while there was still value attached to it, because it is still functioning. For a department that doesn't use it very often, it'll be very functional for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, if it's not being used very frequently. The reason for the single read is there are 2 vehicles available, and one of them is being held pending the outcome of this meeting, basically. So that's why I asked for a single read. It would be replaced quickly, and car 2 and car 3 would both be put up for sale to recoup costs from them.
So given all that, is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve item C, which is amending the capital budget?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I think, Jerry, do you want to explain a little bit about the funding?
Yeah,
And by the way, I don't know if everyone saw, Mark sent a corrected version of the fiscal note later this afternoon, so.
I pointed it out to him this afternoon, but I didn't want to say anything in front of the council tonight. So once we identified the problem and the solution, we looked for how to fund this without immediate impact on the tax levy, because it's not included in the 25 budget. There's 2 funding streams for this, and one of the funding streams is divided into 2. The first one is the sale of the vehicle. Right now, I reached out to a fire truck reseller, gave them all the information on the 2009. As it sits, it has value. They quoted me $25,000. I set that number at $20,000. He gave me some recent examples of trucks that had worse issues than this that were selling for $15,000 and 5 times the mileage. So I still reduced that down. I reached out to a local auction surplus, gave him the statistics on car 3, which is the old police interceptor. They gave me a number of $5,000 on auction. So that's where that number came from for $25,000. The remainder of this, we currently have $26,000 and some odd dollars in the equipment side of our funding assistance program. That can be used for the purchase of a quick response vehicle, which is what this is. We are getting an increase in FAP funding. That will be delivered to us the first week of March. There's been a substantial increase from the state thanks to the shared revenue bill. So all that together equals to $78,000. There is some longer term possible tax levy impact because the money was going to be used for other things that could have come off the capital budget in future years. Unfortunately, with all this coming up quickly, I had to reorganize my priorities and go this route instead.
And Mark has agreed, typically, I think as you know, when we sell vehicles, that money goes into the general fund, and he's agreed that this time it can be used to cover part of the cost of this. So any questions? Patrick?
Jake, you mentioned something when we met, when you first started talking about this, that the lighting on the new truck can be switched over, so in an emergency, it could be used as a police vehicle as well.
Correct. I would have mentioned it on the next one, but I can mention it now. So the truck is outfitted with tricolor lighting, so it's red, white, and blue. I did speak to the upfitter. Single push of a button, they can activate the blue lights when the emergency lights are on. So it can be used as a proper police lighting as well. Being we're two small agencies, I spoke with the police chief as well, that if necessary, in a pinch, it can be used as a police vehicle. It is properly lit. It'll be accessible if needed.
Anything else about the funding? Brian?
It sort of relates to funding, and this has to do with fleet creep, we used to call it. And that's the idea of when things don't get sold and they get a hand-me-down, like the 2009 Interceptor, was the whole idea is, I'm not sure, I would have to go way back to find out, like, when that got replaced. Was it acknowledged that that was actually being handed down? Because I know this has come up with parks. I've had that same argument, and so I got to have the equal argument with you that I've had with parks of like, hang on, just because you got the hand-me-down public works truck doesn't mean that in the future, you know, everybody then takes the truck that's going to be out of commission, because that way then they can put it on for a replacement. So that's my concern.
And it is detailed in the resolution that this permanently reduces the fleet by cars. Car 3 will not be replaced.
Yeah. Which, like, I want to acknowledge with my colleagues here, we increased, and now we're going to decrease and hold it back to where we were previously.
Correct.
So it's not, it's a reduction from our current standard, but it's not a reduction from where we were prior to the addition.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I actually have one small request as it relates to
Sure.
fleet creep, as I call it.
Okay.
And Neil, this has to do with possibly from a city administrator standpoint and having a better overview of all of our vehicles across the entire city when we come to capital budget times, that we have a really good understanding in one large snapshot, what are all the vehicles that we have?
Sure.
Because I think what happens is we're given smaller items to look at, and I'm not sure, I mean, I'll speak for myself only. When I'm only looking at fire vehicles, for example, I don't necessarily have the best sense of like, okay, how many vehicles do we actually own in the city? And sometimes not knowing where they all are in their years and their readings by our mechanic of where they're mapping out for their score and all of that.
Sure.
That would just be a helpful thing going forward.
Easy to do, Alder. Happy to do that.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, I already have that, which.
Yep. I figured every department probably does.
And the car 2 will be added to the replacement cycle at 15 years. It just wasn't, it was replaced by the 2023 one we brought for the brush truck.
Yep.
So I will add this to the horizon list.
The new rotation, yep.
I think all what I would suggest is we just make that an appendix or something specifically in the capital improvement plan then.
Yeah, because it comes up every year and I'm usually a little confused by it. Not sure.
Easy to do. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Did you have something?
No, I think that's a great idea,
Yep.
so.
Anyone else? All right, this is the vote on amending the budget for the purchase, so will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion approved. Now we will move back to item B, consideration of resolution 25-1-2768, a resolution to purchase a 2023 Ford F-150 XL for the fire department, put forth by the fire chief. And again, same reason that this is still for immediate approval, because they need a decision tonight, or tomorrow, or whatever. So is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll move approval. Second.
Any further questions for the chief? Any further discussion? I think he's explained it pretty well. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, one more item started for immediate approval, consideration of ordinance 1-25-783, updating the fees, fines, and penalties schedule put forth by the city administrator. Neil, if you'd like to explain why this is up for immediate
Yep.
approval.
Obviously, this is our 2025 fee schedule, and we are in 2025. So we would like to actually get these adopted and in place as we proceed for all the permits and other regulatory fines and penalties for this current calendar year.
Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Motion to take it out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Neil?
Okay, I will just quickly highlight the fee schedule is with the modifications are in your packet. They are highlighted and redlined in terms of identifying the specific changes. I believe department staff is here available to answer questions on specific changes. But just for the sake of anyone watching the meeting here, either live or in the future, I'll just kind of highlight the key general categories, and if folks have specific questions, I would ask that you just reference that question to the appropriate department head. So the first section is under ambulance transportation fees. This is both our transport and non-transport rates are increased about approximately $200 for transport rates and $100 for non-transport rates. Next section is under building permits. You'll see a significant number of changes in this section here. Not only in terms of the general permits for new structures, sidings, failure to call for inspections and reinspection fees, as well, in addition to a significant increase in the boathouse, shelters, and piers section. Obviously, if folks are familiar, we've had significant issues with that amount of staff time that has been going into those, so that is more of an accelerated. I know Director Prowman has actually conferred with GEC, our building inspection consultant, wanted to make sure to certainly increase these, but also have them remain competitive with the market in place. So these are those recommendations as Director Plowman has made forward. You'll also see, again, in that same section, plumbing fees, electrical fees, and HVAC permit fees also slightly increased, about $10 in each case on those. Another one under fire and fire prevention. Here's one is from the chief, actually identifying additional charges for third, fourth, and fifth false alarms in a 12-month period. This is essentially talking with the chief. In many cases, the improvements and the cost invested needed to be making to eliminate these fire alarms is significantly less than what they would be paying in terms of just paying the fee. So this tries to encourage them to get those repairs done by increasing some of those penalties as they go forward, and it takes some of the additional demand off of the department. Take a look at. Director Anderson has several fees in terms of exclusive use permits for some of the park facilities as well as for the pool facility. So those are identified in your packet as well. In addition, I should add the River Rink rental has a couple of changes and increased costs on those as well. Under the sewer use, there's a Public Works Committee penalty for after 10 days notice of failure in making an adequate connection on the fee. That's been increased from, I believe, $60 to $75. Several public works sections under streets and sidewalks having to do with usually any activity in the right of way, any sort of permits or applications we have to do in terms of usually, especially when they have to dig into the right of way, identifying, increasing those costs and reviews we have to use for those specific areas. And then one change on failure to remove snow and ice 24 hours after accumulation ceases. First violation remains the same, but second and third violations are increased in the current schedule. And I believe that is, we have one last one, I guess, under zoning and occupancy permits. We've increased those costs for specifically for single-family, two-family residences for new and additions alterations, because those do take a significant amount of staff effort to review those. So staff is available to answer questions.
Anyone have any questions? And these were all approved by the committee responsible as well.
Correct, Mayor.
So if there aren't any questions, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Motion passes. But one item further for first read, consideration of Resolution 25-1-2769, approving a lease agreement with Adams Outdoor Advertising for placement and operation of a digital billboard at Ahuska Park, put forth by the city administrator. I think we covered
Yeah,
most of people's questions during the meeting, but Neil, did you want to?
Yeah, I think, Mayor, this is not ready for action at this time, so I think we're just going to request that it be tabled to, look at Attorney Cole, we have to table this to a meeting specific.
No, it's first read.
It's
You
just
don't
first
need
read, so we're okay. So we'll just table this until a future meeting then. Do we need a motion to do that?
No.
So we're good?
You're not suggesting tabling it, you're just suggesting leaving it as a.
Just no action.
Be back in 20.
Correct. Thank you, Alder.
So, does anyone, do you have questions, or we wait until next time to ask them then, or what are you?
I think Mr. Hickey is online, right,
Right.
for Adams. So he is available to the extent the council has any questions for him.
I'm sure
They
he'll
can be
back
asked now.
when we do bring this for final approval as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions?
I would just say my questions have been relayed to the city staff and through the negotiations that they're doing with the company, and I don't feel appropriate asking them
That's
outside of the negotiations.
Thank you, Alder.
All right, well, given that, then we'll leave it as is, and it will be returning.
Mayor, I do have one question, though. If a citizen wanted to know more about this particular sign, would they just watch the meeting of, what was it, the Plan Commission where this was discussed?
Absolutely, that would be the most, certainly the physical aspects of
Yes.
yeah, absolutely, the Plan
Yes.
Commission
And off the
meeting would
top of
be-
your head, well, it's
November
in our
11th.
packet, actually, isn't it?
Was it November 11th, Alder? you believe it was?
November 11th.
Thank you.
And the parks meetings, the several parks meetings about it too.
Yes, thank you.
What was that? Don't know. I can't remember the dates.
Okay. Well, then we will move on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. Start with Alder DePula.
No report at this time, but I did just want to thank our police department and our fire department and emergency medical personnel for being the first responders in the tragic incident at the school a couple of weeks ago. As I understand it, our department was first on the scene, or among the first on the scene because of the proximity. And it just goes to show that law enforcement and emergency medical services in Dane County work hand in hand with one another and continue to respond with mutual aid issues. And very tragic experience, and I'd just like to state that my thoughts are with the families of the school and all those that were affected by it. And thanks to our law enforcement community for responding as quickly as they did.
Thank you. Alder Holmquist.
No report.
Alder Wood.
No report.
Alder Rademacher.
No report.
Alder Bernstein.
I'll just mention that I believe, I've heard recently today that the county is going to pass a resolution repudiating racial covenants, and it'll be based on the one that Monona passed. I forwarded that to the county board chair, and he took my suggestion and ran with it. So that'll be February 20th.
Okay. That was a few years ago.
It was, yeah.
I guess we will turn to staff. Mr. Plowman, do you have anything? Otherwise, you should just go home. Same thing with Mr. Anderson. Jake,
Immediately.
Anything to report? No? Okay. Jerry?
I promise I'll be brief. And I'm coming before Chief Cheney, so.
Right. Well, that's by design.
First of all, thank you. I'll echo Alder DePula's comments. Our police department did a fantastic job with the ALCS situation, among many others. If you hadn't seen, we had a fairly significant brush fire out south of Walmart on Saturday. Had a amazing response from our volunteers. They were all out a good 3 hours working to put it out. It ended up being a busy year. I'll have an annual report for you. I actually have it done, but for me to download it, they want to charge me for it, so I'm recreating it on a free site instead. 1,125 EMS calls we captured, 402 fire calls that are separate from that, and then 162 fire responses for EMS calls within the city where we were already tied up. So just under 1,700 calls for the year. It was a busy year, but a good year. Our full-time staff and our volunteers do an amazing job. So that's all I got. Promise to be brief. So.
Okay, thank you. Chief Cheney, and Officer Hoffman's here as well.
Officer Hoffman's off the hook tonight. Thank you, council. Last time I had a meeting with Alder Bernstein, I'm sitting there crying because I'm so proud to work here. And I think, Alder, you were probably like, what's going on? But, I can't talk about this place without being emotional. And Andrew knows it because I cry in front of them comfortably all the time. And that is to say, first, as you mentioned, Alder, and all of you have expressed in some capacity, obviously, we're really thinking about the ALCS community and making sure that they're supported. In my role as chief, of making sure that all of your police officers who were indeed some of the first to enter the building, some of the first to render aid, including Officer Hoffman, some of the first to discover the weapon used, et cetera. Number one, are recognized for their work, and then that they're supported through the healing process. And we've done that. So thank you all. I've heard from every single one of you, and I really appreciate it. And so have the officers. They really appreciate it. So it means a lot. But that's also what makes me cry, because this place is so special. As you all know, I came from another agency, learned a lot from that agency. I owe a lot to what I've learned from that agency. I risked my life for nearly 20 years for the residents of that community. But this is something special here. And I say that to officially tell you I ain't going anywhere.
We keep hearing about these empty positions.
Yeah. I'm not going anywhere. This is home. I don't live in this community. I will tell you, I spend more time here than I do home. So you're stuck with me for as long as you want me. And I am very proud to say that I work for Monona. Today a couple of you were here, and our city clerk swore in our newest police officer. I wish, and I will bring him here, he knows it, but you should see the smile on his face. I think he will have a very rewarding career here at Monona, and I think that you all will be proud of the work that he's going to do for all of you. So, and that's it. It's 9 o'clock, 9 plus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add a note that I should say we identified this candidate from Sun Prairie. So while as a resident of Sun Prairie, we're losing a good officer, but I gain him here in my day job, so I'm okay with that. So, yeah.
City Attorney Cole, did you have anything?
No, nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
City Clerk?
Yes, candidate papers for both mayor and alderperson are due by 5 p.m. tomorrow, January 7th. That's it.
Neil?
No report, Mayor.
I just have a couple things. We are something that I've talked with the chief about off and on for a while, but we're trying to come up with a date. Is it the next, on the 21st, for active shooter training for the council? I wanted to have that. We haven't had anything formal for the council, really. So I think we're going to try to do that before the actual council meeting. Is that right?
I think
Wait from 6 to
we'll adjust
7?
the finance committee meeting, and I think we're going to try to do that before the meeting on Tuesday. So,
Yeah, so we'll let you know about the timing, but also, our next meeting would normally be on the 20th, but that's Martin Luther King Day, so we will be meeting that Tuesday on the 21st, but we will, we're thinking it'll probably be at 6, is that right?
I think we're looking at 6 o'clock
So
there, yeah.
just keep that in mind, and we'll have to let all the more know. Other than that, there are no appointments tonight. Doug, did you have?
Yeah, one thing I forgot, I wanted to mention this, that the Friends of the Library is doing a book drive on January 11th. I think that's Saturday, yes.
Yeah.
From 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Needed items are books, games, and puzzles. So a little different approach, I think,
They're talking about bringing back the book sale next fall.
Good.
I guess, so I think they're trying to, I'm sure they'll take donations all year long too, though, if you
They will, yeah.
don't get to it this week. There are no appointments. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.